Yo, and welcome to the EPM show. This is all things enterprise performance management, where we are doing our best to give you an unfair career advantage. We have another incredible guest on the show today. If you heard of a little company called Pigment, they are making waves in the EPM space, and we have Julien Lesaicherre on the show today. He is the head of business at Pigment. He's coming straight from France, and the act is pretty incredible. So are the insights that he brings to the show today. He's going to tell you a little bit about the origin story, the approach that Pigment's taking that's enabled them to get such incredible traction in the marketplace, and just why they're seeing the buzz that they're seeing and gaining the customer base that they're already gaining. Pretty exciting company that you want to be aware of. And he also talks about some technical components. We're going to talk a little about sparsity. I know that's a big pain point for a lot in our audience when it comes to space constraints when you're modeling, and Pigment has a unique way of looking at this and tackling this issue. I think you're going to enjoy this episode, guys. Without further ado, let's jump into the show. I'm Blake Bozarth, my co-host Chad Pyke. Today we're joined by Julien Lesaicherre, all the way from France. Did I get that right, Julien?
Perfect. Hi, Blake. Hi, Chad.
Julien, head of business at Pigment. We're so excited to have you on the show today. We have a lot of great points of view that we can't wait to talk about. But before we do that, we got to hit you with our patented question, and that is, tell us a little bit about you and your career in 60 seconds. Go for it.
Perfect. So as you will quickly notice, I am French. So I'm now based in Paris, but I've been living in the UK for the last 7 years. I have two girls, like 5, 8 years old. Other than that, from a professional point of view, I always work in tech. I started my career at Microsoft, spent almost 10 years there, Microsoft France, Microsoft Europe HQ. And it was fun because I started with Windows, which is basically the bigger thing at Microsoft, and ended up on Windows Azure. Back then, it was like I saw the first dollars, coming into Windows Azure. So it was quite interesting to actually start with a big thing and trying to get to something smaller within the big thing. And then I left for Facebook in 2014. So Facebook back then was still relatively small. I think we're like 5,000 people. And I had the great pleasure to work around like platform partnerships and working with all the cool guys, in the dev apps ecosystem. And then I had my kind of entrepreneurship moment in the workplace business. So Workplace was the first SaaS business started by Facebook. It was basically like Facebook and Messenger for the enterprise. We've done very well, especially with very large companies such as Starbucks and Walmart, Heineken, Telefonica, and many others. And 2 years ago, I started to look at the startup world. And 20 months ago, actually, joined Pigment as head of business.
Julien, we have one more fun question for you. And I kind of hit on this earlier before we started recording, but give me your favorite vacation spot in Europe.
What can I say? My hometown, man. It's like, I come from the west, of France. So it's an area called Brittany. I won't tell you, this is not the weather of Spain or Italy, no, but we have the best food. So this is where we go, and this is where I really enjoy, to go with family and friends. It's relaxed. I love tech. Believe me, I eat, sleep tech, every day. But there's just not so many tech companies. So I really enjoy them.
Hey, food is one of the greatest vehicles for great relationships.
Oh, yeah.
So wherever there's good food, that's a fantastic place to be.
100%,
no doubt.
100%.
Food is the best way to travel. That's me and my wife. Everything we do is around, okay, what's the best food spot? That's where we want to be. So now we have a new one on our list, Julien. You've officially won me over. So, hey, we are excited to hear more about Pigment, what you're doing at Pigment. And Pigment's been making a lot of buzz in recent months, especially, and gaining just more and more traction in the marketplace. Tell us, Julien, a little bit about what's the origin story behind Pigment and what's the unique approach that you're taking in the marketplace.
Sure. So it starts with our two co-founders. So Romain actually had already multiple careers in tech. He was a CTO, co-founder of an ad tech company called Criteo. I don't know if you are familiar with this company, but Criteo now, it's NASDAQ, listed, thousands of employees, billions of dollars of revenue. And Romain started this, many years ago. And there, basically, as soon as I think they IPO'd, they actually implemented a planning solution. And back then, Romain, as a tech guy, was like, whoa, that's an interesting thing. Massive promises. I was like, okay, let's do it. And they launched actually this EPM solution. Unfortunately, 6-8 months after the launch, he noticed that the promises were only like promises in the sense that, the company was moving so fast, like hyper growth, hyper changes, like new products, new geos, bugs, resegmentations, like all of the things. In fact, it is quickly understood that the models in the EPM solutions were basically inflexible. It would have taken weeks, if not months, to readjust basically the models to serve the business. And it was like, wait a minute, like I was expecting EPM solutions to be next to the business, if not at the forefront of the business, to help us make decisions, not to lag behind. And so end of the day, most of those models were basically made on spreadsheets. And the EPM solutions was used more as a repository of data. It was like, okay, something is off here. That's real. On the other side of the spectrum, it also, the other co-founder of Pigment, she started at Google. And at Google, they've been using like lots of Google Sheets. She was the right hand of the CFO, and lots of the planning, lots of the modeling back then were done on spreadsheets. She was like, okay, sounds a bit weird that the company is that big, is actually relying on spreadsheets to make such important decisions and planning processes. And then she moved to an investor called Index Venture, which is one of the most successful investor on earth. And she became an investor herself, investing in many like amazing companies across Europe. And again, she saw that each time a company wanted to raise money, they were coming with their beautiful Excel model. Each time the company actually had a board meeting, they were coming with Excel models. And she was like, I have nothing against Excel, but those things are pretty fragile. Like, how can I actually even audit the data? How can I make sure that there is no mistakes, in the formulas that you are showing here? And she was like, something is off here. Like, there's probably a better way. And those two met, and they're like, we have to do something. We really have to do something. And so that's why basically they created Pigment. And so they brought, a fantastic engineering team, a lot of people coming from like top tech companies, from, of course, like ad tech business is a very highly demanding engineering type of business. People from Datadog, people from different like top companies to actually build at first like the modeling engine, because this is like the mode itself of an EPM solution is to have like the most powerful modeling engine that will be able to model like any types of planning and processes. And that's what at the end makes the difference, right? And so they spent like the first 18 months just doing that, meeting with all the professionals in this industry, the analysts, the system integrators, the partners, the customers, like previous, of course, leaders, from top EPM organizations. And then Pigment was there. And so after 18 months, basically started to ship, Pigment to the first couple of customers. And after that, I could basically spend 18 months to prove market fit. And now we have like many companies on Pigment, from Airtable to Carta, Figma. Also, we have like beyond tech, we have one of the largest processing outsourcer on earth, like WebHelp, 100,000 employees, lots of retailers. So we're getting there, but we have a lot to do. And so that's why we are super excited and committed, to serve, this amazing community.
Julien, as I listen to that story, I think two things I heard that kind of led to the genesis of Pigment, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, were unmet expectations and painful planning experiences. Is that fair?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it starts from a problem. So yes.
Yeah. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on the specific experience your Pigment is trying to drive for their end users? I know that's something you're super passionate about, just talking to you offline. So can you maybe share a little bit more of that with the audience?
Yeah, totally. As I said, like it starts, of course, with a powerful modeling engine. Like if you don't have this, like you don't have like a planning solution that can actually fit needs of most of the companies. Like if you look at Fortune 500 companies, of course, they have like very, very complex problems to solve. And for that, they need a very powerful solution. So that's kind of like a no-brainer thing. And we spend like so much time, working on this, and we keep working on this, of course, in order to provide the best tools for the analysts and others. Now, one of the other parts, of Pigment is really to offer like a delightful experience. And if you look at basically like the different types of users in EPM, you have like the analysts. Like the analyst may spend like 7 hours a day on the tool. Like they deserve to have a fantastic UX. Like they deserve to do things that they love because they actually spend like 7 hours a day on it. They are very smart, highly talented. They probably understand like better than many other people, like the nuances of the business. And what you want is to give them the opportunity to translate what they have in their brain into a model. So we can actually scale this, right? It's the best of human and machine to some extent. And so from the modeler experience, like we basically like spend so much, we are like, I think that our engineering team is actually like modelers obsessed. It's like, what kind of shortcuts we can give them, what kind of constraints we can remove, what kind of things we can automate in order to make sure that those people spend like the best of their time on the thing that will bring the best value, the biggest value for their company, but also for themselves. And so that's the first category. The second category of people are more like business users. And those are the tough ones to convince. Because again, if you're an analyst, you work for a large company or even like for a mid-sized company, well, you have to do your work, whatever the tool is. Like at the end of the day, like the work you use will shape the way you work, but well, you're gonna have to deliver on your work. You're an analyst, like boom, you have to do it. But business users, they always have multiple options. They can send you their inputs, on Slack. They can actually send you their inputs on Teams. They can actually ask, for a Google Sheets or a spreadsheet to say, hey, you know what? I don't like your tool. Like your tool is too complex. Your tool is awful. I forgot the link. Like I didn't bookmark it. They will find like zillions of excuses to not actually be in because people hate change. That's why actually we are still on Earth, right? Like because we hate change, we protect ourselves. And so with Pigment, we truly believe that the planning is efficient only when it brings people together. If it's centralized, it's broken. If it's only bottom-up, top-down, it's broken. It has to be continuous. It has to be a flow of information between the people in the field, the management, and of course, like the CFOs and the office of the CFOs, the analysts, the RevOps people, and so on. So you basically can have like different versions of your future. You can have the more nuanced version of the truth in front of you, so you can make the right analysis about what's in today and what may be your future. And for that, you need to be able to drive adoption. Adoption is everything. Like again, a tool that is not used is just a waste of money. You can have the most wonderful, powerful tool built. If it's not used, it's a waste of money. And so that's why like we put so much emphasis on the UX. And that's what a lot of our customers, even Figma, which is basically like the design companies, right? And software. Like they say like, wow, like it's truly fantastic. Like we love Pigment so much and we can actually bring our people in because they just love the UX. We just like facilitate, the onboarding. We just make it easy for people to understand what they need to do. And so that's something, as you can say, as you did say, Chad, we are very passionate about. It's really about this combination of like powerful tool made by humans, for humans, and design like delightful experience.
So for those of you that are watching this as a video podcast, you're seeing it on YouTube or Spotify, you might be catching these glimpses of Julien as Steve Jobs. He's got the black turtleneck on. He's talking about the passion for the design and the UX. It's a really great point, Julien. I want to call that out. You talked about how, hey, there's analysts that spend 7 hours a day on this. They need to actually love the tool, right? It needs to be an incredible experience for them. That's a great, but then you also make that distinction to remind us that, hey, in order to have a successful enterprise tool, right? This is EPM, an enterprise tool that actually connects the enterprise. You're going to have, in large enterprises, hundreds, if not maybe thousands of end users that are in the business that are not spending 7 hours a day. But you had this concept, you mentioned it before too, Julien, around push versus pull. And you want to expound a little bit more on that? Like, what does it look like to actually have pull for adoption versus push?
You have two ways to deploy a solution. You launch and then you force people to get it. It's going to be painful, it's going to be costly, and at the end of the day, very high chance that you will be able to drive enough momentum so people actually come to the platform. And at the end of the day, you always have this kind of network effect. You need to hit like certain amount of people in the platform, so more people actually join, and then everything will be easy or easier in terms of adoption. But the first 40%, if you if your play is just to force people, you have to input data here. Okay, thank you. What's in for me? Why should I change, my way of doing things? Like for the last 5 years, I've been sending like an input on, again, email or spreadsheets or whatever. Why? What's in for me? This is kind of the push approach. Again, costly, painful for everyone, by the way. No one actually enjoy forcing people to do something. It's not fun. It's not fun to remind people every day, hey, do not forget to do that. And you have the pool. And the pool is basically like when you are able to provide like a delightful experience for the users, like from the notifications to the workflow to the overall experience on the platform, then suddenly actually people will get in the tool and stick to the tool, because the point is actually not to drive like first touch adoption. What you want is retention. Retention like day 2, retention day 8, retention day 30. And like that's one of the things as well that we invest a lot of time and efforts on. And that's why on Pigment, we have some companies, even not necessarily like very large companies, like companies I'm talking about like 2,000 employees, they can have like 150 people on the platform. And that's for us probably the best, the best kind of rewards, because it means that people see value and they see what they can get out of Pigment. So push pull, always something I'm trying to evangelize a bit, because IT projects, like most of them, fail. and we can say a lot of things. Yeah, it's because of the integrators. Yeah, it's because of the systems. Yeah, it's because of integrations are not there. No. It's because you didn't get like the go from your core audience. They didn't want to jump with you into that change. So big topic. Yes, indeed.
I really just feel like this episode is becoming a masterclass on just business in general, even independent of EPM, because some of the themes that you're calling out here, Julien, are just obsession over the end user and the customer, driving an incredible experience. We pull, we don't push. We want retention, and that's going to come from those delightful experiences like you've talked about. I'd like to take this a little bit more technical, though, now, because I know one of the biggest pain points a lot of end users and planning solutions have is around sparsity. Can you maybe talk a little bit about just the more technical side of Pigment and how y'all are addressing such a key pain point for a lot of end users and EPM professionals?
Sure. So it comes back again like to the experience we want to give to the mothers. So the mothers are basically our core audience, right? They are the ones, right? The people who will actually map, a business logic into the tool so companies can actually make more informed decisions. So their role is actually like absolutely critical. It's already like super difficult to be good at this job without having to deal with additional constraints from the tools that you are using. And one of the big concerns that we have seen very early on was actually around like data sparsity issues. Just for those who may not be familiar with this concept, it's basically sparsity occurs when like the number of non-zero values are very less compared to the zero values in data sets. So meaning that you have a lot of empty cells in your models, but those empty cells are basically consuming storage. And in many other platforms, like you are limited in terms of storage you can have in your workspace or in your model or in your app. And so at some point you're like, whoa, how should I model? Like what kind of things I would actually like remove in terms of dimensionalities and potentially in terms of like just like interesting analysis I could actually draw from it. But you will have to make a decision because you won't be able to basically do all the things that you want. You have to deal with sparsity. And at Pigment, we handle this. So it's a big deal. And of course, like we have a lot of excited, modelers and partners about that because it has been a big issue in this industry for the last decade. And so this, basically with this, we can actually like give more freedom to the modelers to express their talents into the platform because this is really what we want. Like we want them, to bring like the best version of themselves to actually like help companies to make more informed decisions without all the constraints.
It's fantastic. I know you also shared a little bit of a story, Julien, of a finance executive that you were talking with that had literal nightmares about sparsity. We know this is a hot button issue in this industry, and it's one reason why Pigment's creating such a great buzz. So I want to actually transition to another topic, and that's around this concept of total cost of ownership. Julien, how does in terms of implementation lift, in terms of talent upskilling, how would you kind of describe Pigment's position in the marketplace, maybe compare and contrast against other traditional platforms?
So that's a big one. A CFO told me like a couple of weeks ago that for him, like everything changed at COVID. You know, like especially like for the year previous COVID, like I wouldn't say money was free, but like it was a different world, right? And CFOs were more like in the background. Like definitely companies were run by CEOs. I mean, they should be run by CEOs, but it was like CEOs, CROs, maybe sometimes CMOs, and CFOs were more like, I wouldn't say in the background, but definitely not, you know, like on the main stage for many of the conversations. And then COVID happened. And like suddenly, like your entire like supply chain, logistics, demand, like everything got disrupted. Like you had no more baseline on anything. And so suddenly everyone was looking at the CFO, like, give me answers. Like tell me what's going to happen to the business. Should we stop hiring people? Should we start hiring people? Should we raise pricing? Should we like stop, you know, selling this product? Should we stop selling in France? Should we like, tell me. And fortunately or unfortunately for CFOs, it did not stop with COVID, right? Like since then we are like economic crisis with recession, or I mean, we don't know if we're in or out, but like kind of recession, you know, in many countries. Of course, like the energy crisis as well, the geostrategic crisis, of course, with the situation in Ukraine. So it's more uncertainties. And what you want is to look at your CFOs. So your CFO is telling you like, it's going to be okay. Like, I know what may happen to us. And so CFOs suddenly had to deal with like macro trends that absolutely like no influence on, again, like supply chain changes, inflation, like they can't play, you know, on those drivers. And of course, all the other things that they can actually play with. Like, and so at the end of the day, it's like a long list of different drivers. And to answer your question, Blake, the point is like, when you have a business that has been running for decades, no changes, you can stick to your model. It's going to be okay. If it was okay for yesterday, it's going to be okay for tomorrow. But when you live in a world where basically you have like a new macro trend coming at you almost every month, a macro trend that will definitely force you to rethink the way you look at your business, it means that you have to change your models. And here is a trick. A lot of solutions so far have been amazingly powerful and helped, you know, a lot of companies to build their models. The issue is when they wanted to actually go for an improvement or change in the model, they had to rebuild the model. And rebuilding is hard. Rebuilding is costly. Rebuilding takes time. But today, companies, they don't have time. And to be fair, like a lot of them, they don't have money as well. And so that's why, like at Pigment, we put in place like a very modular approach on the modeling. So you don't have to rebuild the model. And that's really something that is absolutely key. We bring a new level of agility on the model, like even like scenario planning, like all the things I shared with you, like will the inflation be 2% or 9%? It's a pretty big driver, you know, in your model, right? This may impact your demand, this may impact your cost, this may impact like so many things in your business. Like at Pigment, you just can, like in one click, literally one click, you create like, you turn on what if scenario feature, and then it will automatically duplicate your model. You will be able to change the drivers, like as many as you want. And then to compare side by side, not just like one and scenario A and B, but like as many scenarios as you want. And this came to reality because of, again, like the investment of the architecture of Pigment that is like highly flexible, highly modular to help people to basically decrease the total cost of ownership, which is not, again, just about buying the license and shipping your first model, but really about maintaining your model, and especially maintaining your model in a world that is changing at a crazy, crazy pace. And that's what we hope, you know, we help companies to manage and navigate, you know, this by giving them the tools they can adapt, change very quickly and easy.
Super helpful. I want to follow up, Julien, one of our mutual friends, Paul Melchiori, the legend in the EPM space. He talks about, he's very excited, as you know, about Pigment, early investor himself, but he talks about how one of the things that he loves is at Pigment, as a model builder, you don't necessarily have to be trained by Galileo, as Paul would say. Can you talk to us a little bit about how would you compare and contrast, I guess, maybe the upskilling part for talent so that they can actually become proficient as a modeler, even in this, maybe compared to other more established platforms that people may be used to?
So the vision of Pigment is that anyone can become a modeler. It's a vision. So I don't want to oversell here. It's a vision. Like, we want to go there. For that, you have to put in place like different pillars, of your foundations. The first one is, of course, like the modeling experience in product. And so, for instance, on Pigment, you have the formula program, which is like just magical. Like, you type your formula, of course, object-based, like the ARR divided by number of employees, and you will see live actually the results of your formula. Just this, like, when you actually get into the tool, get familiar in the tool, you just, oh my God, I'm able to produce something, which is very far from what you can see in the market right now. So lots of things like this, to help people, like even like when it comes to the data integrations. So we have like native connectors with likes of Snowflake and NetSuite and Salesforce and like so many others, where you don't need IT to actually help you to connect to those tools. You just have a scaler on Pigment. Of course, you need to configure things, you need to get the right access rights, but it's really, really easy. It's a matter of minutes, not a matter of 3 weeks. So that's one. It's really like experience in the product to make it easy for as many people as possible to graduate at some point as a modeler. And then you have the off-product experience. And so, like, I think it's been now like more than a year, we invested in the Pigment Academy. So we have a full academy, like with online trainings, forums, knowledge library with all the documentations where people actually can comment, like, submit as well, like feature request. By the way, I think we are one of the only players to actually share our roadmap externally. So it's all of these things, when you people actually like have to go into something new, you want to reduce the threat alert. Like, you want to reduce as much as possible the concerns people may have. And so for us, really about like experiencing product, but next to product is to have like the most solid knowledge library and collective intelligence we can bring to them. So when they have a question, they're not freaking out. They don't need to call. Of course, we have support and stuff like this, but they don't necessarily need to call support just for a simple question. They go on the forum, they ask the questions, they get help from one of our partners, for actually a peer in the industry, or from someone from Pigment. They go on the, like, all these things, like, it has to be natural. And that's the power of the community that we are trying to bring in terms of collective intelligence for our community.
Julien, we could go on and on with you today. This has been such a blast, but let me get you out on this question and mindful of your time. And that is, back to a personal question. Is there any kind of BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal personal to you that you're going after these days?
It's all in Pigment. I mean, man, like we are really at the very, very beginning here. Of course, we have big ambitions and we take, our job very, very seriously. Some companies are making very, very big decisions based on analysis done thanks to those tools. And so we know, especially now, as we discussed, like, the world is going like through so many changes that a lot of companies, a lot of people are looking for answers, or at least like more information so they can make, the best decisions for their people, for their business, for their shareholders, for their partner ecosystem, for their customers. And so on my side, it's still like, again, like being all in on Pigment. I'm sorry, I don't have I would say like my advice would be like, if you believe into something, like, just be 100%, like, just be all in. And I think this is what you do as well, Blake, Chad, with this amazing podcast. But I think it's really about that, like, be focused, laser focused on one pain, one audience, try to understand them as much as you can. It's like, and well, bring value. And that's, at the end of the day, it's not about building a business, it's about bringing value to someone. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Amen. Amen. So good. So, hey, this has been an absolute blast, Julien. We'd love to chat more, and maybe we'll have a future episode because there's so much more we could discuss. But thank you so much for being a part of the show today. And we can't wait to see all the things that Pigment continues to do going forward.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Wherever you're consuming this, if it's YouTube, if it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we appreciate you. Make sure you're subscribed. We have a lot more amazing guests on the way, a lot more great content. We're doing our best to bring you value and have fun while we do it. We really want this to be a career advantage, listening to this show, and we want you to enjoy it. So it means a lot. Make sure you're subscribed for what's to come. And also, if you're up for it, it would mean a lot if you leave us a like, a comment, a rating, a review, whatever platform you're on. That really helps, and it gets us fired up when we see those. So I appreciate you guys. Find us on LinkedIn. I'm Blake Bozarth, my co-host Chad Pyke with a Y. Would love to connect with you there. Have an awesome day. See you next time. Peace.